Raleigh is the owner of Red Meadow Advisors, a Colorado-registered investment advisory firm. Helen has an MBA degree from the University of Wyoming and an MS in Business Economics from the State University of New York, College of Oneonta. Helen also holds the prestigious Chartered Financial Analyst designation. Most recently, Helen graduated from a leadership program of the Rockies and won the 2013 Defender of Capitalism Award. Helen has been a proud U.S. citizen since September 18, 2013. Let's hear a warm welcome for Helen.
I'm good, thank you. Alicia, thank you for your kind introduction, and I know you and Liz worked very hard for this meeting, so let's give a round of applause for Alicia and Liz. It is a great honor for me to be here today. Among all the virtues, prudence was considered by ancient Greek and later on by Christian philosophers as the cause, measure, and form of all virtues. Prudence is about free man's ability to make right decisions based on reason. That is why freedom thrives by prudence. How would you feel if I tell you that I don't trust you to make the right decisions, so I will make all the decisions for you? I will tell you how much you can eat, what you should major in college, who you had to work for, and where do you have to live. You must think I'm being ridiculous. But that was exactly what happened to my father. I will share you my father's story, even though it took place more than 5 decades ago in a place over thousands of miles away. But his story is still relevant today because those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. It all has started from my great-grandfather. He's a successful landowner in China. When the communists took over China in 1949, they demolished private land ownership through a series of land reforms. My father witnessed his grandfather lost his property overnight. As a teenager, my father rarely had enough to eat. He learned from his parents that no matter how hard his parents worked, they couldn't lay any claim to their produce. Because through the land reforms, all farmers had to sell their produce to the government at a fixed price. Private transaction was strictly forbidden. An adolescent American boy, as many of you are, probably spend most of the time wondering about girls. She likes me not. Girls would do the same thing for the boys. But for my father, he spent his adolescent years worrying about 2 things: where he can find something to eat, and how is he going to be able to pay for the tuition for the next semester. In 1958, the local communist leader decided that an irrigation project was needed even though there was no river nearby. My teenage father, along with other males from the village, became forced labor to build the irrigation project. He had to carry heavy load of soil in a basket balanced by shoulder poles. Like everyone else, the only solid food he received each day was a 1 steam bun for lunch. One day, my father passed out on a construction site due to exhaustion and hunger. When he woke up, he decided that he has to do something to change his life. He learned from his classmates that an electrical vocation school in Beijing was recruiting students. he was able to persuade the team captain to let him go. My father and his friends took several hours train ride to the Beijing railway station. That was his very first trip left away from home. That also was his very first train ride. All he had was a pen and $1 in his pocket. After he arrived at the Beijing railway station, he quickly realized $1 won't go very far in this very big city. He found the school representative, and he was very persuasive. He talked the school representative into letting him sleep at night at an empty classroom. Also gave him a few meal tickets to the school cafeteria. But the school entrance exam won't start until 12 days later. So he had to be very prudent. He ate only 1 meal per day to keep his food budget to 10 cents per day. His meal consisted of 2 pancakes and a small pickled radish. Whenever he was thirsty, he drank from the faucet. But he wasn't too concerned about his hardship. He was blissful. Because for the very first time in his life, he was about to take charge of his own destiny. He passed the exam easily and was admitted by the school. Several years later, Beijing government decided to consolidate several vocational schools into Beijing Industrial University. And my father naturally became the first university student from his village. When my father was taking charge of his life, the situation in the countryside got worse. While most of the village men were tied up with the construction project, the grain was rotten in the fields due to lack of care. Local communist leaders used previous year's grain reserve and even next year's seeds to fake a harvest. All these imprudent policies caused a famine a year later. My father lost several family members during the famine, including his maternal grandmother, his 2 uncles, his aunt and her family of 5. The worst of all, his newborn baby brother, who died in my grandma's arms due to lack of food. Throughout China, the famine claimed over 20 million lives. People living in the city had a better chance to survive because of the food rationing policy. My father's prudence and the fortitude not only saved his life, not only changed his life, but also saved his life. However, in a totalitarian regime like China, no matter how determined my father was, he simply wasn't allowed to make much decisions for himself. He had to change his majors several times due to the changing needs of the government. Upon graduation, he was told who he had to work for and where he had to live. I was destined to live my life just like my father until I met an American visiting professor when I was in college. He helped me to enroll in American university. I arrived in America with less than $100 in my pocket. To make ends meet, I had to wash mountains of dishes and scrub toilets in a Chinese restaurant, making only $4 an hour. Today, I'm an owner of an investment advisory firm. So how did I make this transition from making $4 an hour to an owner? Well, in a free society, minds matters. I spent my first couple of years in America earning 2 master's degrees, one in business economics, another one in business administration. When I started my first job with Citibank, I was the only woman in the risk management department in Denver. I had to build statistical models to analyzing credit risk for a large set of portfolio. The courses I took in college, such as statistics and math, came really handy. Galileo famously said, mathematics is the language with which God has written the universe. So kids, don't neglect math. And yes, it is really cool if you're very good at it. And today, I manage money for other people for a living. When you run your own business, everything you learned in school comes into play, such as marketing, accounting, economics, and of course, math. Besides the investment knowledge and experience, a main reason that my clients choose me over other advisors is that they trust my character. A person's character, such as honesty or prudence, is the foundation of his business. If the foundation is shaky, the business is going to fail sooner or later. As Frederick Douglass said, the life of a nation is secure only while the nation is honest, truthful, and virtuous. That is why the character education you received in Liberty Common High School is so important. Compared to my father and I, you are very fortunate. You are born and raised in a society where you are free to shape your own destiny. Our story is still relevant today because the increasing bureaucracy in this country are gradually taking away individuals' decision-making capacity. Remember, bureaucracy is inherently anti-personal freedom. You can either accept the situation as it is, or accept the responsibility for changing it. If I may offer a few advice as a big sister, here's what I will tell you. First, make learning a lifelong endeavor. I didn't stop learning just because I graduated from school. Since I started working in 1999, I earned 4 more professional certifications, including what you heard in the introduction, the Chartered Financial Analyst designation, which was considered to be the gold standard in investment industry. I also learned German when I worked for Mercedes, and I'm participating Toastmasters regularly to improve my public speaking skills. All these skills opened many doors for me. But the most important education I received in my life was when I attended the leadership programs of the Rockies. LPR taught me about the importance of America's founding principles and the moralities of the free market economy. Your beloved principal, Mr. Bob Schaefer, is the chairman of LPR, so he's my teacher too. I have to tell you, 2 days ago I sent him a draft of this speech. He didn't hesitate to send it back, pointed out all the grammar mistakes I made, and with half pages of suggestions. So Bob, I'm happy to report back to you. All your feedbacks are incorporated. And there are a few of the LPR graduates, they're standing at the back of the room. Please take a good look at them. They are examples of someone who take lifelong learning seriously. And no matter what you want to do when you grow up, I would encourage you to learn something about the philosophy, history, and economics. Pick up a book by Aristotle, or John Locke, or Milton Friedman. These intellectual giants' wisdom can help you build a solid moral and intellectual foundation. Knowledgeable citizen is absolutely essential for a free society. Also, find a role model in your life, be it your parent, grandparents, or a teacher. Learn from them. I know their words of wisdom may sound old-fashioned right now, but believe me, sometime down the road, you will discover that they have been right all along. Last but not least, learn from your mistakes and setbacks. Someone told me this morning, life is a race between education and catastrophe. When you are free to choose, no matter how prudent you are, you will make mistakes and encounter setbacks. That's just part of life. Sometimes mistakes and setbacks are best teachers. They help build character. Remember, as long as you have a solid set of virtues and moral principles guiding you like the North Star, you will never get lost in the dark. I wish you all the best and thank you for having me.
Let me direct them on questions.
Okay, sure.
Ms. Raleigh will take some questions if you have any. Just raise your hand, we'll recognize you. And I don't think you might have heard, or maybe heard this clearly, but when Alicia was going through the introduction, she mentioned the date that Helen became a United States citizen. It was a week from, it was last Wednesday.
Yeah, it was from today,
Just
yeah.
became a U.S. citizen. Let me ask the first question.
Uh-oh.
Can you, the story about meeting an American professor, a visiting professor in China, and then how that brought you to the United States. Can you tell us a little bit about how that happened, how you found your university, and how you were, I guess, allowed or permitted to come to the United States and go to school here?
Okay. Well, the professor I met in China, at that time, he works for State University of New York, one of the colleges. And it's not Oñiantan, the one I attended, but he works in the school system. So when I went to college in China, I organized these activities on a weekly basis called English Corner. So basically, it's a place for people to get together, practice their English. And I never shy to speak, even though I wasn't very good at it at that time. So he was very impressed. And I asked him a lot of questions, and eventually he got tired of it. He said, well, you just have to go to America to see for yourself. And obviously there are tests you have to pass, the TOEFL test and the GRE or GMAT in order to go to graduate school. He helped me to write the introduction, recommendation letters, helped me to choose the schools. The reason I choose SUNY, Oñiantan, because the tuition was very, very cheap. But even though the tuition, I have to tell you though, there's a little story about tuition. The tuition then was only $2,000. It's really not a big deal today, but it was a tremendously financial burden for my parents. Because for 17 years, my parents never saw their salary increase, so they made less than $20 per month for 17 years. So that was a big burden. But my parents did not want to stop me to pursue my dream because of financial reasons. So they never borrowed money from anyone. For me, they basically put their pride aside, borrowed the money from everyone they knew. And both my brothers and my sisters also gave me their dowries or the money saved for wedding. My mom kept a little notebook, which she wrote down every name and the amount they borrowed. So it's that kind of money helped me to start my American dream. So I don't know if that answers your question, Bob. Go ahead. That's a really good question. Well, I think LPR really helped me to set the moral foundation, understand America's founding principle. It's very difficult to give, because first of all, China does not recognize dual citizenship. So if you become a U.S. citizen, you have to give up the citizenship from China. And that was a very, very difficult choice for me. I've been in this country for 17 years, so I could just stay on green card for indefinitely. But I thought with becoming U.S. citizen will allow me to participate in the political process, be able to vote, have a voice. Actually, the week before I became U.S. citizen, I joined some of my girlfriends, went down to Colorado Springs. There was a recall movement going on. And because I couldn't vote, so all I could do is just walk the neighborhood, encourage other people to vote. And I met this mother and her daughter. And when I asked them, have you voted yet? And they just shrugged their shoulders, say, we don't vote. I asked them why. They said, well, we don't like any those politicians, so we don't vote. And that's just really troubled me. I told them, I said, I'm from China. I was never able to vote. I can't vote my mayor. I can't vote for county representatives, not forget about the president. I never have a voice. All I could do is obey and suffer. And here you have a choice. Why don't you exercise it? So I took this become American citizenship as a tremendous honor and responsibility. It gave me a voice to participate in a political process that I wouldn't be able to do and just be a, green card holders. So. Thank you. I'm sorry, go ahead. What was school like in China? Well, I have to tell you, it's much different now compared to in the past. In the past, I can give you just one example. First of all, school day is very long. That's still the same case now. School day is very long. We start like 8 o'clock in the morning, and for lunch, you get a 2 hours break because everybody take a nap. But then the afternoon school will not be over until 5 o'clock. Then you have 1 hour for dinner. Then you have to go back for evening study for another 90 minutes. So the school day is very long. But I have to tell you this. What I hated most was the PE class. Because most Chinese schools do not have a gym. So all we could do were just track and field exercise, which really made me puzzled when I later watched China compete in the Olympics. I said, why couldn't China win more gold medals in track and field? Because that's all we do is track and field. And I absolutely hated the 100-meter hurdle because I hate jump. And, I thank God that in Chinese schools, they put a lot of emphasis on academic achievements. Otherwise, I would never be able to graduate. But now I go to exercise every day because I get to choose what activities I want to do. And I know I'm doing it for myself, not doing it for Chairman Mao, for the party, for the government. So that makes a big difference. So yeah. But the Chinese students do study a lot, just do not have as much fun as you guys do. Oh. Who has a question? Go ahead. How old? What's the second part question?
Were the tests took it over? Did it take a long time or just
No, I came here when I was 20, between 20 to 21. The admission test did not take that very long. You can take it in China. Actually, it's a big industry now to help people prepare to take those tests. It's more difficult to get a visa. And my hometown was about 1,000 miles away from Beijing. 20 years ago, that's the only place you can go get a visa. So when you travel to Beijing, you'd have to stay, and you have to go stand in line for hours. And if you got rejected, then you have to make the trip back. So it was a tremendously time-consuming and financially consuming, process. So that's make it more difficult. Yes. Go ahead.
Obviously, becoming a U.S. citizen brings with it a lot of hope. There's a lot of people in this country who have major concerns about where this country's headed. We've got a group of young people here. What can they do today and over the next however many years before they're allowed to vote? What can they do in addition to their education to continue to bring hope to this country?
That's a really good question. I have to be careful because if I say, you know, I can't tell you what to do because then that becomes coercion. So you have to make a best judgment for yourself. Be prudent. But I think education is absolutely important. Like I suggested, besides your normal study, I would encourage you to study about the American founding principle. What makes this country so great? What makes people like me risk everything and came here with no money, but we want to risk everything to find a new life, to want to shape our own destiny. You have to understand what's really, when people talk about American exceptionalism, you really have to understand what does that mean and take pride, understand the meaning and take pride. And then when you're gradually old enough and be active in the political process, I know teenagers can easily become angry and think, nobody nobody understands us, you know. I know, because I have both my nieces are teenagers, and especially my younger niece. She's 12. She's only been here, and she only has been here for 2 years, and she's so Americanized. It's very troubling sometimes. But well, sometimes, you know, she uses so many like, it's really bothering me. I say, try to use commas and periods, you know, don't use like. But education is absolutely important, and treat your civic duty seriously. Like I said, when you can vote, even in the school setting. I gotta share you another story. This will tell you how important the vote is. I told you earlier that I was never allowed to vote, you know, in China. Just nobody can vote. The only time I could vote was in school, in a school setting. We have to vote for our class president. And we always vote for the teacher's favorite because that's the only, we all get the underlying message. That's the only person who will be elected. But when I was in high school, we were so fed up by this teacher's favorite because he cheated in an exam and the teacher just turned her head around. So we decided we're not going to vote for him. And so when it's come to election, first round election, he was not voted like 100%. Our teachers was obsessed about 100%. So she didn't let us leave the classroom. She made us vote again and again and again. So we stayed in the classroom, vote 4 times until this person was elected unanimously. So that's the first lesson I learned. Is that my opinion doesn't matter. You know, all I have to do is just suffer and obey. And obviously not everybody's made equal because somebody as a favorite could have a special privilege than I do. So I would encourage you, even from small setting, from the school setting, from your family, community, start getting involved early. But you have to understand why are you doing this. And that is when you study the founding principles of this country. What makes this country so great? So great. What makes everyone wants to come here to make a living, risk everything to come here. Understand that will help you to defend the morality of this country and the morality of free market economy. That's the only system that people can truly thrive.